Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Well, hello everybody. It's welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, now with Studio Cam, the show for movie lovers who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Before we get started here, I want to shamelessly plug a new kind of film news editorial concept I'm trying. I'm calling it the Friday Film Five-ish. The first episode, it's basically where I comment on film related news stories within 5-ish minutes. The first one is already up. The link will be in the description or somewhere. I don't know, either up there or up there. One of the two. Anyway, be sure you subscribe, and let's not forget to hit the bell so that you get notified. All right, let's keep moving. I don't think I'm quite finished with all the plugs. I am also now a participant in the Amazon affiliate program. In the description, you're going to, and we're going to start doing this for every episode. There'll be affiliate links to the movie we're looking at. This time it's Ladyhawke, of course, along with a few film history and analysis books I'm a big fan of, I own, and check them out if you're interested. Anyway, tonight we are going to find out if Richard Donner's romantic fantasy adventure Ladyhawke holds up. As far as the classic, bear with me, folks. As far as all the classic tests go, Bechdel test, no. Can you call it class conscious? Good Lord, no. Class analysis, none that I'm aware of. Could it have, even if we went back 35 years ago, it was from 1985, could it have earned a reframe stamp? No, but I do believe it qualifies for an asterisk. Lauren Schuler, a spouse of Richard Donner, she produced this film along with a slew of others, recognized as a bit of a late 20th century, early 21st first century trailblazer for women, being a filmmaking executive at that level for almost her entire career. And hopefully we'll talk a bit more about her career as we get into this film. So with that done, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share. I'm going to put the trailer on because I really do believe that is got to be the absolute best way to kind of introduce this kind of this insanity that is this film. So here we go. Let's put that there. And I hope you're getting audio in here.
The pickpocket was the key to his plan.
Of course I missed something.
But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Ladyhawke.
Well, you got to unmute the thing if you actually want to hear it. So that's my bad. My apologies, everyone. Okay. I think that's about it. I think it is now time to give a warm welcome to the gravy in our show's poutine, my co-host, Mr. Jim. Wait a second here. Just a second. Mr. Jim Chaboyko. And Mr. Chaboyko, you have no audio. So anyway, I'm going to, while Jim figures out his audio issues, I will Jim, can we hear you now? Oh, I think I almost heard something there. Okay, to anyone in the chat, can you just chime in if you can hear Jim? I can't, but as we've learned before, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, does it? Oh, I heard some kind of beep. Oh, looks like we've now officially lost Jim. So, you know what? I'm going to continue moving forward with the show while Jim works out his technical details. Let's just start ticking some things off. We do have some folks in the chat now, though, and why don't we let's shout them out. Oh, and look at that. We got the pun train. The pun fun is here. Richard. That's a good one. Here, let me give you a laugh for that. There you go. Okay. Oh, yeah. So many things about this movie hold up. And absolutely that picture. Okay, let's see if Jim's got a mic now.
Hello?
Mr. Hello.
Good. I don't know. I just switched the cables around to different USB ports, but anyway.
Yeah.
Ta-da! It's all magic, like an ancient curse. Saving throw against technical difficulties. I got a 13. Am I clear?
Well, you know what? What I'm going to do is all I can really say about this one, Jim, is my chroma key is better than someone's chroma key. All right. Okay, so we got a few people in the chat. So Richard brought his pun game, his pun fun game to the show. Katie's here and commenting on one of the many things that holds up about this film, the movie poster. Jim, I get it. All right. Who else do we have here? I know we got Shashank. And what else? We also have, let's see. We got Shashank, Richard, Katie. Shashank did drop in to say hi, but he's got an exam today. He's got a jet, and we understand that completely.
All right, good luck, man.
Brett, buddy. Have it. Yeah, I have no doubt. Intelligent young man like yourself is going to do a great job.
Show that dean.
That was a reference, but not in the way that some of the people showed the dean.
Yes. That was a reference to last week's broadcast, of course, Three Idiots. But
a fantastic broadcast, we will say. All right, but tonight we're looking at Ladyhawke, 1985's Ladyhawke, and although you only heard, folks, half of that killer trailer because I forgot to unmute it. What I'd love to hear, I really thought it's like I wrote a script, Jim, for to capture everything, and then it kind of dawned on me, it's like, do I really need to, I think that so mid-80s trailer really just captured the essence of this film. That said, what was your take? What's your first take?
Well, a couple things. It made me want to play D&D again. It's been a while since I did that. Made me realize Rutger Hauer, R.I.P. Wow, what a cool guy. He looked. I mean, there was scenes where he looked just so great in the black armor. There was one shot that was just all Green Valley and him sort of down in the corner. I guess he was praying or ruminating or something, and I just thought, man, that's pretty awesome stuff. But I mean, we can get into it a little bit. There were some pacing issues. I think they really let up on the humor that the Matthew Broderick character Phillipe brought in, and it got sort of dour. It became a little more sort of serious and dour towards the end. But it was fun to watch. I think I've only seen it once, and I think that was in the theater, and I literally haven't seen it in, I think, 35 years. So that it was interesting to sort of catch up on it. I had forgotten a lot of the details. I did remember the fingers. That's sort of a Third Man echo, the Orson Welles movie, the fingers coming up from the grate. It was kind of a fun movie. Horrible music. Oh my God. But fun movie. How about you? I'll continue. I think the music was credited to the Alan Parsons project.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I had to screw around with my
multi-camera
with the studio cam.
Okay. What is this? Some Richard Donner production?
A new feature. Comedy gold. That's right, folks. We have a laugh track.
There we go. So it was Alan Parsons. The Philharmonia Orchestra was credited with the score, but yeah, I wasn't fond of the music at all. It was
like it reminded me, Jim, and it was one of the first questions I wanted to ask you. I felt like it was an 80s television, mid-80s television show. There are times when I'm like, well, when's Knight Rider coming out?
Oh boy.
It's like,
and it was
dated,
but it wasn't.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I'll just add quickly. It wasn't even consistent. Like you would go from the syrupy strings when they talked about the love story, and then it would be this guitar synthesizer on all the traveling scenes. If somebody had to walk to the next hut, there'd be some traveling music.
Yep.
There didn't seem to be, the one thing I miss about DVDs and the extras on DVDs as opposed to watching everything streaming is that you get sort of the breakdowns. And so watching the Lord of the Rings extras, for instance, when they talked about the music and Howard Shore's work and how they had this one theme for the Fellowship, and when the Fellowship broke up, they broke up the theme into little parts, right? And they sort of scattered. So that kind of stuff was quite neat. But when you're sort of paying attention to the DVD extras and that sort of thing. So with that in mind, there was no consistency to this. Like there was guitar and there was violins and there was synthesizers and it was almost like any kind of instinct to read the room that the composer had. They just sort of threw it out the window. Like it was jarring, really. But that's probably the biggest holdup for me for the movie.
Okay, I had a few more than that, but I want to first of all I'm going to throw up Richard's comment here, and he was it's a terrible. A lot of people liked it in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually say, although it very much totally dated the film, and if there's advice to filmmakers now, it would be, you want to date your movie, you really want to make sure that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to kind of laugh about that part, make it super current. And now I'm thinking about it, some of these, you know what? It's funny, actually, though. A Knight's Tale has a very poppy, current, to its time soundtrack, and that still kind of works. But I don't know. I think what a great way to date your product.
And probably within 5 years too, it sounded dated. Like if you watch this movie in 1991, for instance, I think it would be people would go like, "Ew."
Well, and now going back to it's you know what? It was current for soundtracks. It didn't have any pop music where we could kind of at least get nostalgic. Whereas Knight's Tale, it really was, hey, we're going to kind of amp up and redo and reinterpret a lot of pop music that had staying power. So I think they were square dancing or whatever stylized dancing to Young Americans or something, or David Bowie or something. Yeah.
And it was fun. I mean, they did that. Obviously, it was a conscious choice, but this was this was a bit of a mess. It sort of reminded me, and it didn't even seem that bad. But if you've watched Gallipoli in the last few years, they've got, I think Maurice Jarre did this
Vangelis.
Yeah, I'll look that up afterwards. But there was lasers.
A little harsh.
If you remember, it was about two runners, and so Mel Gibson and the other guy, and they were running to deliver a message between the trenches, and there was laser sounds like
1917 for Australians.
Yeah. So,
you know what? Richard, Lost Boys had a current soundtrack. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Richard, do you remember, was it did it have a lot of pop music, or was it just very 80s? I'm kind of, I can't, it might maybe one we have to take a look at later in the year, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm kind of curious. But it was, it took me out of the movie. And you're right, Jim. Like you talk about tone and the way it would change tone and style. but a lot of it was, and I thought of you, and I'm like, oh, kids laugh, your children, laughing at Breakfast Club, which had one kind of incredibly off moment right at the beginning. Should get them to watch this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And say, hey, let's watch the Breakfast Club. Doesn't look so bad anymore.
Yeah.
Katie, I laughed at times with the music choices for some of the scenes. It was so out of place. What was interesting, I looked at the critics, and some were talking about it, praising it in the time about, how authentic it was. And it's like, what? That helmet thing, it looked like a really, like a medieval pastry knife. Like nothing. Like it was, to paraphrase Stephen Colbert when he was on The Daily Show, it had medievalness. It's like that truthiness,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and
Richard, Pop Rocks, Jimmy Barnes, In Excess. Yeah, I think... Brian Torreson was current during the 80s. Brian, good to see you here. Everybody, welcome Brian. He's actually viewing it from Facebook, but I'd be more than happy to pass on your hellos from YouTube to him. Brian, thanks for popping in. Brian, I don't know where you came in on the chat. We kind of started from well, this kind of took us out of the movie, which was this very, very 80s soundtrack, but not pop music. And we're now kind of wondering, Richard's just digging it all up now. The king of the playlist, Richard's, so he's talking 80s pop rock, Jimmy Barnes, In Excess, Lou Gramm, Roger Daltrey. Wow. Now there's, I know singer for The Who, but that when you hear his name individually, I just think so 1980s.
Yeah.
High school dance stuff.
Yeah. And I think they were all coming out with solo albums right around that time, too. So, yeah.
If we want to talk about everyone, as we kind of sharing our first general takes on this, Jim thought it was, how if you put it in one sentence, Jim, your first take.
Yeah, first take, I would say, that's,
summarize,
yeah, I know.
You know what? We'll move on.
I was thinking about this.
On.
Yeah, give me 30. Go on to something else. I'll come up with something. I was thinking about it.
My first impression was, I was like, now mind you, I don't know about you, Jim. Anyone else in the chat? I do not have great positive memories of this film. I kind of have a mushy sort of, I was not. I perfectly honest, I was not excited. I thought it was going to be both kind of the best and worst of the 80s. I was I didn't remember, not that I remembered it negatively, I just barely remembered it. It was just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I remember it, but could I tell you any great scenes or anything? No. And when I watched it, and then I finally got to the end, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't hold up well at all. And even against 80s, 80s kind of romantic fantasy adventure. You put this up against something like Highlander, and even though Highlander shows its age, it shows its early 80s aesthetic and everything, it's still a pretty damn good story. It starts with a bang and just keeps going, whereas this thing, you're well into the second act and you're still really not sure why we're all here. I had excuse me, terrible belch. I had a different opinion.
I think we lost your audio there, Rob.
Never mind, because I've taken the audio off. But I really like this whole... I'm working out the whole B cam, the studio cam thing. It'll eventually we'll figure it out. No, I'm not a fan of this. I was like really kind of, I can't say disappointed though, because I went in with low expectations.
Yeah, I mean, when you ask me what I just sum it up in one sentence, it's all sort of predicated on the fact that it changes kind of dramatically from the first hour to the second hour. So it sort of purports to be, or it thinks itself as sort of a fun but serious, sort of almost like a swashbuckling, maybe not quite. But then the last hour, like I said, there's some really corny lines. The script sort of falls down, and then Matthew Broderick's Phillipe character starts talking. There's some real dud lines, but just, you know, and so he's at times he's almost like a sort of a vaudeville character where he's got, you know, wisecracks, and he's sort of the guy that makes everything run and all that kind of thing. Yeah. He's their agent, right? He's the sort of the, you know, if you were to compare, he's the Hobbit. He's like, even the little people can have a great effect kind of thing. Yeah. But then he starts saying things.
He's also like the comic relief and kind of a leader. Like
he's almost given too much to do, and then they sort of drop the humor of it in the second half. So it's really quite a mixed bag, and a sloppy mixed bag at that, I think. You know, there are positive things about the movie, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but it just wasn't consistent, and it's
beautiful.
It certainly was. Vittorio Storaro was the guy who filmed like Apocalypse Now, The Last Emperor, won 3 Academy Awards. You know, like it was top.
The paint a pretty picture.
Oh, and like
he had $20 million to do it, like in 1985. Yep.
Yeah, I mean the cinematography was top shelf.
Thanks very much, Brian.
And that was top shelf, but the rest of it really could have used a little bit of a kick in the pants, I think, and just tighten up. It was almost like it sort of reminded me of those fantasy movies that are sent through an American prism. Like, you know, I don't know anything about the kid who would be king, but I have no desire to see it. I sort of suspect that's the same kind of thing, where you have this sort of medieval thing that's filmed through a sort of an American lens, and
I'm not sure though. It's the I think we can break it down to simpler problems in that it had there were story issues here. Like and again, Jim, like by the time the first act is over, which is kind of, it takes sort of forever, you're still not 100% sure. Okay, well, what are we doing? Is it about revenge, or is it like you know these characters, but you don't know what their deal is. You don't know what they really want, or even a good hint of what they really want. And meanwhile, okay, now we're talking about Legend, which I bundled. No, that's it. Brian, you're absolutely right. And yeah, Jim, great. It was like this, I bundle in with Legend, another kind of moodier, well, at least part of the movie, a moodier, you know, romance where you're still kind of going, so why was this movie made? You saw it, I'm assuming. I know I did. Mia Sara was like they're both super hot talent at the time, and I thought Mia Sara was going to be like my teen into young 20-something movie crush, and then after that it was like, well, that was Mia Sara.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't remember tons about Legend, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
No one will judge you.
Yeah, no.
Heck, you could have seen it on the weekend, and if you still didn't remember, I suspect none of us would judge you. What did you like? I mean, I've got lots of opinions. But what did you think? What did you think about what did you remember of this movie?
I remember
before you watched it. What did you remember? Like I not to blame you, but to blame you. It's Like this was one of these ones you wanted to you suggested. Maybe
Yeah.
not you wanted to watch it, but you suggested it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, like what was the memory that was driving that?
Just sort of, I guess, when we were younger and we would get into the, D&D and we were all in that sort of science fiction fantasy. After Star Wars, I guess you used to see a lot more of this sort of second tier, and third tier. I know I've used Krull as a punchline a couple times in this, but the sort of second tier and third tier science fiction and fantasy.
Masters of the Universe came out.
Yeah, and
at around this time,
you started to see a lot more of it, and it was right in line with us growing up, and sort of that getting into it ourselves, and I think it was all just part of that sort of mid '80s sci-fi fantasy mash, right? And I remember the three leads, and I remember Matthew Broderick being the comic lead, and I think at the time he was sort of riding a pretty high wave, like he'd done War Games and a couple other things there too. And I didn't take a look at the chronology, but he had about 4 or 5 really good years there. I've Michelle Pfeiffer speaks for at the height of her powers. And Rutger Hauer, especially since he passed in the last couple of years there, man, what a cool guy he was. Like he was, again, I'm all about the effective villain, and it's really hard to get an effective villain. And his villain
of soundtracks, can you hear the
Yes,
the jive that's going on right now?
Oh yeah.
Very.
It's from the Ladyhawke soundtrack, as a matter of fact. This was during the church scene. No, but and Rutger Hauer is just so he was sort of Roy. What was his name in Blade Runner? Not Roy G. Biv, but anyway, it was Roy as the replicant there.
Yeah.
He just and the more I think about it, the roles that I've seen him in, the sort of the cooler he is. He made a great bad guy. He makes a formidable good guy. Yeah. I like how they dressed him in black, whereas the bad guys were all in white at the end there. The horse, he looked great on a horse. It's the whole bit, and a little bit of Vigo there. I think that sort of European American kind of thing.
Well, when I turned it on and it was going, and it was like, and especially the first 10 minutes are still kind of you could have some hope for the pace and everything. It's starting slow, but it's letting us know people. It's breathing. The scenes are breathing, and I did think, he's almost like Germany's answer to John Wayne, like a modern, but he's got that same kind of presence or a similar presence, a bit of a swagger.
Yeah.
While a European, a neon noir, postmodern John Wayne. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he had presence. They all have such great presence.
Yeah.
But do you think? And Katie had. Well, first of all, Richard's thinking it'd be fun to rewatch a Krull at some time. Well, you know what? We'll put it on the list because
gotta find it first.
Yeah, I suspect some streaming service will hook us up. Heck, it was able to hook us up with this nonsense.
Yeah, that's true.
What did you? Katie had mentioned earlier. Let's see. There it is. The movie poster and how it holds up. It's funny, actually, if we look at that poster, which I find absolutely, hilarious, and I don't mean to, well, here, Jim, let's put the spotlight on you so it doesn't look like I'm just trying to take you out here. But if you look at that poster, oh, heck, we could do this. If you look at this poster, I don't even know, and I can kind of vaguely remember this, Jim. Is that Matthew Broderick? If you look at him in the poster, does that really look like Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Do you? I'm looking at it a little closer. Do you not think it does? I mean, it's
I think
colorized.
It's like a really bad, almost he doesn't look like, he looks like him, but it's not like, you could almost, I thought it was like, is that a lookalike? Did an artist do something? Is it just so over-processed? It just doesn't look right. And even in the film, he had some sort of lip thing. I'm wondering, though, if this was near that time he had that car accident. Or was that after?
I think that was
this?
after. I think he was more. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, no, I think it was after. I can look that up. But yeah, that one doesn't bug me. If the funny thing is, if you look on Google Images for the movie poster, that's the best. That's a good one. There's a lot of them that look like sort of like the Brazilian one and the Spanish one. They look like really bad sort of 1980s beta box covers. It says his car crash was in '87, so this would have been a couple of years later.
Richard, is that an Easter egg malfunction in your background?
Oh no, I'm going to keep it up until I because it was, I believe Aquila was France, and it was shot in the Dolomites.
See, Brian gets it. He doesn't look right. Sorry, shot in the Dolomites.
Yeah, in Italy. So and they weren't even nation. Well, I don't know how accurate it was to the times, but they weren't even nations then. Really, they were like a series of kingdoms. So I wouldn't even say, like, for the critic saying, and this is in Variety. Who's authentic? It's like, no, it isn't. Just no. It's a pastiche of that and 80s flair. Like, you almost need to watch this with a camp kind of, and that's maybe not fair to Richard Donner. I don't mean like all his stuff is camp, but I think you kind of have to watch this. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but there's a camp now. Yeah.
Camp kind of thing going on. Going back to some of the great movies, fantasy movies of the 80s, Brian is mentioning Never-Ending Story. Jim's brought up Crawl. What about you? Guess who's in the house? Jelly Duck! Hello, Ahmed. Good to see ya. But you look at the 80s as a time for fantasy. I almost think it was like, wow, it had a great opening in the decade. Like, and Highlander, animated heavy metal. I mean, okay, more late 70s, but Ralph Bakshi was starting to make some really cool, like he did that first part and a half of Lord of the Rings animated, and a lot of rotoscoping in that. Like, I mean, and then it just kind of went to mush, and some of these whiffs like this one or Legend, but okay, we're all bagging on the poster now.
I was laughing at it earlier. But it's got Michelle.
Every Canadian's seen Youngblood, and I think every Canadian's kind of, oh, really? Brian's referring to campy 80s movies. Have we seen Youngblood? I remember when that came out. It's about hockey, which may be some sort of... Mr. Torreson may be taking the piss with us Canadians here.
Okay. I'm glad he capitalized hockey, though.
Yeah, that is true.
That's proper.
And it is, like, I mean, although it was... Oh, talk about your 80s whitewashing, eh? Wasn't that Rob Lowe?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like, wow. And it's one of those ones, as a Canadian, it's like kind of, why in the States? But at the same time, hockey in the, you're finding crazy hockey people in every reserve from coast to coast to coast.
Yeah.
So, I may have to look that one up too. Okay, so Jim, let me ask you this. What movies did this thing remind you of? Like, we've talked about some of them, but...
Yeah, there was, there was elements of it. And it can sometimes just be like 1 or 2 minutes of the movie that it strikes you. I already mentioned the sort of the Lord of the Rings notion that even small, insignificant people can do significant things. Or I'm paraphrasing it badly, but there. What else did it remind me of? There were a number, and you know what? There was, and it was funny too. It was another soundtrack thing or another score thing when he was swimming back into the castle through the sewer, which actually looked pretty clean. And
my
also,
line in my thing was as when I was actually working on a summary, my synopsis was like Matthew Broderick Shawshanks his way.
Yes, yeah, that was the one. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, it was like a little bit of a Shawshank moment.
Yeah.
But when he was going back in, and this might have been an ode or an homage, as people sometimes say. But he was swimming, and they had this big sort of fat brass section doing really like almost like a Jaws thing, and it was from his point of view swimming through the sewer. And I thought, is that a little Jaws nod or something? Like, it was a really weird moment, and it was literally 5 seconds long. But it was it was another instance of the score being completely inconsistent, and so they just did this little thing, and he sort of emerged from the sewer and was back into the castle.
Speaking of like little nods and those little references, did you and anyone in the chat, like, I really did right from the opening credits. I'm like, okay, so opening credits, rip-off / reference to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like
the
right
colored
down to the
sun.
types, the color,
Yeah.
the view, the type style. The way Matthew Broderick. And there's a part of me like, did his agent, kind of chime in, and Matthew wants to be like Harrison Ford because he thinks this is the movie that could make
Push
him an
him over the
action
top,
star.
yeah.
Oh. Ryan Torres and Johnny now
I
picturing
know
a
about
Hans
that.
Zimmer score to Shawshank. Oh, good grief. Somebody's loving his soundtracks.
Yeah,
Ryan,
yeah.
you got to come around a little more often.
It's like a little free association.
And
Yeah,
Brian,
you know
you
it-
need to check out Sideways on YouTube if you haven't already.
I did look at that, by the way. I watched.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
watched.
solid, eh?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And
yeah.
Richard, you're a music guy. I recommend it to you too. What other movies was it? Like, I mean, you know what? There's these little grabs, and
Yeah.
like, and everything's a mashup.
Yeah.
But as far as the narrative in that, did it remind you of any other movies? Like, I mean, or is it more like this is almost like fairy tale stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it took a lot of those. You had the trapper, right? And he was poor Alfred Molina can't catch a break. I think he's what's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, probably I don't know, the second movie in half a decade where he gets spikes through the face. Like he of course he was Indiana Jones's.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
He
It
was the
like
first
right down
death.
to the dirt and bad teeth.
Yeah, and
the filthiness of bad teeth.
No, he and it's funny too because I think he's from London. He's Chilean back. His parents are Chilean, but he's from London, so he was doing a little bit of a Cockney thing or something like that at times, anyway. But yeah, and he was almost unrecognizable too. So that's your future Doc Ock, folks. Yeah, no, so it had these sort of types, right? You had your trapper, you had your and that's what he was an expert at trapping, and he was going to capture anything in animal form. You had the knight, you had the
henchman,
maiden, you had
the leader of the guard,
the thief, and there wasn't a lot of, I don't think, horizontal career movement going on there at all. So yeah, in that way, it did feel like a fairy tale, even the way they sort of introduced the characters and a lot of that sort of slow burn, like, the gradual, growth of the relationship between, say, Phillipe and Navarre and that sort of thing too. So, yeah, I mean, very, very fairy tale-y.
Well, do you think now? And maybe this isn't so much for you, but I'm wondering if anyone else felt this way. Like, there's a part of me going back to that kind of mushy mess that this film is. Enjoy it or not, and it had its moments.
Oh yeah.
Is part of the problem, and going back to the marketing and even the way, so you got Matthew Broderick, like in many respects just being Matthew Broderick, kind of a mixed, every now and then it's like, is that a Cockney accent? What is he, like there's, so it was there one of those things where he gets attached to the project and his agent, he's, well, I've got to be more funny.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the first half of the movie feels like it's about him. Even though it isn't, even though he's not really like Rutger Hauer, because Rutger Hauer is still a big deal in 1985. Michelle Pfeiffer is,
ascendant,
about to be a superstar.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, no, this is what this movie is. So you feel like there's almost like two movies fighting each other.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, pick one.
Well, it gets better. Did you read anything about, and this is, I just looked today, I happened to look at, whatever, Wikipedia and various other like little articles that have been written about it. I was actually trying to find out the filming locations because I was really curious. I have to say, that castle, the one that Leo McKern's character, Father Ignatius, I think it was his name, or
Mysterio, or...
Yeah.
I got the Wikipedia page.
But that castle was probably one of the best settings, one of the best castles I've ever seen. A lot of times you just see a studio castle, and that thing was just sort of like
it reminded me of Carcassonne in some ways.
Oh yeah, did it?
You know what, Richard and Katie, maybe they can chime in here. Maybe some of the other. It was very much. You did feel like you're south of France or Spain or Italy.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up that Wikipedia. There we go.
Sure.
Right. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay. All right. Ladyhawke. What am I looking for again? I don't know.
Leo McKern. You're just looking up a character's name.
Oh, yes. Character's name. Thank you. Imperious.
There you go.
It's like great names.
Yeah.
And then John Wood. All he's got is the Bishop of Aquila.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really? That's it? That's all we're getting?
Another one that it sort of reminded me of a little bit, and I think we've talked about it before, is a little bit of, in a roundabout way, in the structure way, was Hunchback of Notre Dame, because in that one, the lead character, the titular character, well, he's not titular in this one, but the sort of the lead character, the one that you go into it with, Phillipe, Matthew Broderick's character, is not the one that gets the girl, but he's the one who's responsible to
bring the people together.
And so it all sort of hinges on him. And of course that one has to do heavily with the church. There's an evil bishop or Monsignor or whatever, and corrupt church officials anyway, and that are coming between this young couple. And so in a lot of ways, it sort of reminded me of that as well. Interestingly, just in researching this, I was going to talk about casting in a sec, but Richard Donner's real name is Richard Donald Schwartzberg.
Oh,
and I thought it was kind of interesting that they would cast Matthew Broderick, who's sort of doing almost a sort of a Jewish New York character, as the lead. So I wonder if that was sort of his channel into this.
Yeah. He didn't write it though. Like there's a lot of people in development.
Yes.
In this. I don't think it was a personal passion project. This was he'd gotten beaten up out of the Superman thing. Like, I mean, a guy with highs and lows in his career. Huge, big career. We can't hang this all. But I don't think this is some personal passion project.
Okay. He was attached to the project for years, though, and sometimes people put their stamp on something.
A killer producer, with a bigger career than he had. Okay, Brian Torreson, would we say Ladyhawke is a bigger 80s mess than Ishtar? Good Lord, no. Oh yeah, no, Ishtar is like studio killing mess. This is just wow, we didn't make our money back on this dog. Oh well. I don't know. Nobody's career died because of this. We all know who Rutger Hauer is. Michelle Pfeiffer. This is barely a bump.
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick. It's like, okay, well, you want to be funny, then be funny. You want to be a player in this style of movie, then pick one. Richard did chime in. It was Cincino Castle near Cremona. Richard, I didn't when I was referring to Carcassonne, it was more just on the size and blocky scale of it. That's what I thought of Carcassonne, because it's just such a huge, massive block of in a sprawling castle, eh? And even as you go inside, or I'm thinking Mont Saint Michel in France, or just these massive tanks of buildings. That was more my kind of reference. But anyway, it was there you go, folks. The more you know. Castle.
Speaking of Ishtar, I don't know if you had read anything about the casting, but early versions of the project had Phillipe played by either Dustin Hoffman, who would have been in his 40s then, I don't know, and Sean Penn.
Sean Penn, I see.
And then
some of these names, all of a sudden they all just sort of pop right up.
Yeah.
But I could see Dustin Hoffman, which meant he's probably always kind of a comic relief character.
Yeah, it almost seems like Philippe's supposed to be younger, though. I mean, he talks about being an orphan and a few other things. The other one, too, is that...
Yeah, but you get older, it's not like it's deep into his youthful,
No, but I he would be older than
Papillon, but funny.
Yeah, exactly. And the other one is Rutger Hauer's role was initially supposed to be Kurt Russell, which I think this this was good with Rutger Hauer. He sort of
we're making this realistic period piece.
Yeah, underplayed it a bit, but yeah, it could have gone all kinds of different ways, of course. Yeah. But I gather it was a bit of a hit back then. I mean, it seemed to.
No, it was $20 million.
Was it
budget? $20 million budget, $18 million at box office.
Ooh.
This was a mediocre movie.
Yeah,
didn't make anywhere near its money back. And although, if you look at the critics, it's 67% on 20, not 24 reviews, but but even then, it's kind of like, remember, when we looked at The Five Bloods, some of this is similar in one guy called the film divided against itself. Scenes of high adventure of visual splendor spliced between other scenes with dialogue of a banality that recalls the famous Tony Curtis line, "Yonder lies my father's castle." Some of it's you got to kind of question at times their ratings and how they rate or put a number to old reviews, because here's another one. Time Out at the time called it all rather facile sword and sorcery stuff, of course, but at times very funny, and it did have some comic moments, some really good moments, and always beautifully photographed. That should not get. It's a movie. It's a beginning, middle, and end. You're telling me a story. If I want to see pretty pictures, I'll go to the art gallery, or call it that. Hey, all we're doing is pretty pictures.
So,
Siskel and Ebert, they both, back in the Siskel and Ebert days, gave them both thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully filmed. Potential to achieve lasting success as a classic in its genre.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
I'm
nailed it. And Siskel was super hard. He was super hard on these kinds of movies.
Escape from New York, Kurt Russell.
Yep.
That's right.
With the hair and the eye patch and probably a different character, I'm sure, but
Brian, now I'm picturing Snake Plissken in Ladyhawke. Well, he'd keep the same boots.
Yeah.
He had those boots, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it would be quite entertaining, you know. But,
Swagger under the set.
Yeah, it had the swagger, and it's not like they're doing a period piece. Yeah, and it's, I mean, heck, you could have played it like he played in Soldier, you know, you know, very reserved as a robot, and not the robot, the computer that wore tennis shoes kind of robot. What, Jim? Do you like? I'm coming. You know, so you got the movie. Here it is. What would you, if you're gonna say this thing had a theme at all? Like, I mean, what would it be? Like, I mean, true love triumphs.
Yeah.
And a thief can be redeemed. Although I don't think he stops stealing.
No,
I suspect the second he leaves, he's gonna be anyway. See a priest.
Yeah, you know,
I'd rather be stealing.
I think there's an element of restraint here because they said whatever you do, don't kill the bishop until the curse is lifted, right? So they couldn't until a certain moment.
BS ending. It's like,
yeah, exactly. So they end up killing him anyway.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I don't think they had that night for day, day not night, kind of thing, and I don't think they really. The whole eclipse thing, I'm not sure not that it's a logical thing.
In the spoiler zone. Okay, logical.
Not that it's a logical thing, but I didn't understand the mechanics of breaking the curse. Just they have to confront him both in human form, and the only time they could do that was when there was day and night and not night and day or something like that. But it was very much. It got mumbo-jumbo-y there as well, which is another thing that I can't stand. But
I think it was all kind of... part of it is, for the first 40 minutes, we don't really know what's going on. We really don't. Like, I mean, even in the first 30 minutes, by the time the first act should be, well, we know everything we need to know to get into the adventure. We're still... Now, I mean, us as audience members are aware of what the Hawk's deal is.
Yeah.
But ostensibly our lead character, at least up to that point, the movie's about Gaston. We still don't know. So by the end, and it comes out in a midpoint in the movie where initially it's a revenge movie, or maybe it's a heist because they got to break in. But there's it's about revenge and honor. Meanwhile, the priest is really afraid that they're coming back. Like, I mean, I think by the time we get to that point where we're told how it can work, we're just not that engaged. Like, I kind of got it. It's like, okay, so when it's daytime, she's a hawk. When it's nighttime, he's this, but an eclipse. Like, I mean, it's neither day nor night. An eclipse.
Yeah.
Which even then, like, again, go back, they would have known what an eclipse was.
Yeah.
No one was like,
what do they mean?
What? What a mystery.
It's almost like
and that's I
was just gonna say it was almost like the first. So, like, there was a certain levity in the first half or something that they really just dropped, and like, there was. I just wrote down they said, "Oh, the horse's name is Goliath," and Matthew Broderick goes, "Oh, pretty name," and little digs like that. And he was talking to God, and he had this sort of ongoing thing with God that continued through the whole thing.
Shtick.
And it was actually a quite. The church wasn't just a prop; like they referred
gone somewhere with it.
Yeah, and they did refer to. I mean, at times it had both this magic going on, and then the church, and they did talk a lot about the church as a functioning institution rather than just where the bad guy lived. And so there were some elements that were really good that they just seem, it just maybe it ran out of steam if they filmed it chronologically. I don't know, but
I don't think it even had it never got steam up. I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
problem. Is it was going so slowly up this hill, and then it just kind of let. Oh, okay, we're good now.
yeah.
Let's just slowly slide. We went up, and now we'll just slowly slide back down.
Some
Not
of these,
that steep a hill, we'll get.
yeah.
I like where is it? Brian goes, sounds like Werewolf of London meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
That
would be good.
Yeah. There's a movie they should make. I do think maybe some of the tongue-in-cheek of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Brian, maybe if you can explain that a bit better. I'm about to run off on a whole tangent, but I want to make sure I think I'm actually understanding what you're saying there. Okay, Richard chimes in. Had to laugh at the cheesy scene where they both briefly stared at each other in human form.
They almost touched.
Till flapping happens and that.
They almost touched.
Look at this. Okay, if we see my hand, and you can kind of, especially if I move it around, you see some bit of green in there?
Uh-huh.
That is, here, you know what?
That's
Let's
magic?
zoom in on me. That's how you know it's a problem. Like, my chroma key's pretty good, but it's not great. Watch Jim, go back, watch the thing again, or not the whole thing. Go to where she's falling off the ledge.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this massive halo of green around her. I'm like, that was the moment where I'm like, my green screen's better. Like, they had a lot of money, and they were not. I wonder if how much of that $20 million budget was just it was in development hell. And when you get that and you look at the number of writers involved, you know what? That means it's just a lot of people. Like, this was in development hell. It might have picked up a few million in fees, in people being attached and then paid to go away or attached. Hey, rewrite this for us. You bet. I get my fee. Yes, you do. Oh, we don't like this. We found another director or, and it just keeps moving around. But anyway,
half that $20 million was nose candy.
What's the 80s?
Yeah, that's true.
But going back to that, like that, what did this, like, I mean, what's the point of this flick? Like, true love triumphs.
Yeah.
Is that about it? Is what we got here? And not even that strong a true love triumphs?
A few years ago, they did a...
we didn't meet them before they were cursed.
Yeah.
If we had a bit of that backstory and kind of got to feel for them feel for them together, that might have helped us out.
A few years ago, they did, and I saw it on a plane, and the plane landed, and I had been watching it just sort of offhand, but it was that Richard Gere, didn't he do a King Arthur movie? Does that sound familiar to you? First Night. And I just, the plane landed before the movie ended, and they just shut the screens off, and I didn't really care. Normally it's like, no, let's just stay parked on the tarmac to watch the end of this movie. Never sure about the sort of the logic of that, but yeah, I wasn't sad, and it was a lot like this. Like, it was just like I've done a Western, I've done a disaster movie, let's do a medieval thing. And I sort of wonder, too, if they were thinking, fantasy's big. Kroll made $7. Let's put together our own thing,
Brian mentions, how does he put it here? First scene out of Africa. Horrible examples of horrible chroma key. And hey, you know what? Everyone in the chat. Oh, look. Oh, wait. We got some great comments. But first, so for everyone in the chat, everyone who's watching this after, Shashank, Jelly Duck, if you're still with us. Yeah, the best examples of horrible chroma key in a film. And let's go to 1980. Anything before that, like, it's amazing they did it. But after 1980, after Star Wars, everyone knows how to do it well. There's a choice not to do it well. But I will check that out, Brian. Richard, getting back to what we were talking about, Jim, calls for a Ladyhawke prequel.
Who doesn't call for a Ladyhawke prequel? Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's not a bad thing, I think, to watch a movie that is sort of, cause we sort of have the habit of watching a lot of movies we like. So, like, it's not a bad. And these are people sort of at the height of their powers, at the height of their popularity, and they make something like this, and
it's hard to make a good movie.
Yeah,
it's hard to make a movie anyway.
Yeah,
like it's I'm bagging on it a little, but I'm not. Yeah, it's hard. It's just hard. Like,
there was just some,
and none of them were phoning it in.
No, I thought the cast was really.
What I thought was the performances. Like, I mean,
yeah, I quite liked them. Like I said, like we've talked about before, I think Matthew Broderick's, and I don't blame this on him, but I think his character sort of got away from the writers or the director or something like that, and he sort of changed where he was saying, he would be kind of like, hey, like he'd had that sort of that wacky delivery, and then then all of a sudden he got very serious, like, oh, true love is eternal, and he would say lines like this over and over and over, like right through about the middle third of the movie, and it just didn't land. Like, it just didn't seem, he was game, he was obviously, in there, and he was fun to watch,
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Just looking at some of the comments, but as they're coming in, but Rutger Hauer I thought was great, and Michelle Pfeiffer is seeing her back then was kind of. I have a quick Michelle Pfeiffer story. So, not about meeting her, but I was
but
one of the first.
Gather around, kids.
Sure. Fireside chat. One of the first times I ever
going to tell us a story.
One of the first times I ever saw her on screen, I think it wasn't Grease 2. That was I think that was her big start or something.
Yeah.
But there was an Alan Alda movie called Sweet Liberty, and I
remember that.
Yeah,
okay,
and
continue. Yeah.
So he was the older. It all had to do with putting on a play or something. I don't remember too many details. I actually went probably as a 14 or 15-year-old to see this in the movie theater, and I haven't seen it since. But Alan Alda was sort of an older.
Might have been a reason. Actually, 1986, Jim.
Was it 86? Okay, yeah, a little bit older than I. Anyway, so I guess I would have seen her before this. But anyway, so I was watching the movie, and there's a scene where he's trying to seduce her, and they're about to go in for a kiss. So it's one of those shots where the two heads are kind of coming together. And I was in the theater, and I heard the sound, and it was something like, and I was looking around, and I thought, what is that sound? And I realized it was coming from me. So I thought,
really? Like, here,
I was just sitting here
up on the screen here.
I was just sort of, boy.
There we go, Sweet Liberty. Look at that. Middle-aged Alan Alda.
yeah. With looks like. What's his the English Bob Hoskins.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right here. Oh, I'm clicking the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Never mind. All right.
The late Bob Hoskins, the late great Bob Hoskins. But.
Yeah. All right, let's get that out of there. We don't need a great shot of my boom stand, my mic stand. Where the hell was I going with that? Michelle Alda look at this.
And also,
Torres said, Alan Alda putting on a play sounds like an 80s movie. And it was.
Also, Leo McKern was in it, and then Leo McKern has done tons of stuff. Turns out he's awesome.
Here.
What's that?
Or you're talking about how he was in this movie. Leo
No,
McCarthy.
in Ladyhawke, and in terms of the cast, and it was sort of nice to see him again. He, of course, for fans of The Prisoner, he was various iterations of Number 2.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was, and he's got a huge career. He was in A Man for All Seasons, which won a whack load of Oscars, and yeah, he's got quite a he's passed on now, but he had quite a career there. Rumpola the Bailey, I think he was the lead.
What about John Wood? I thought, like, as the evil bishop with
Yeah.
the name, like another missed opportunity, I think, as far as they could have done something with this character. Just as they could have done something with the church, and again, not to make it some big political, but done something with it, like yeah, it just took too long to get to the point. And
oddly, John Wood, apparently, I just noticed now, was in War Games, so which is also a Matthew Broderick vehicle, which is kind of an interesting coincidence. But yeah, so the cast was good. The cast was game. They were good. They were watchable. They were, you could root for them. The cinematography was amazing.
Stunning.
The music blew, and the story needed, needed a fixer, I think.
Well, yeah, there's a problem with the film story, the story development. Not going to blame. Like, again, you've got three credited writers, including a Mankiewicz, big Hollywood story, screenwriting name. But you got three credited writers. At least one uncredited writer that we're aware of. Again, the longer these things are in development hell, the more it just gets passed around. And so, I think, and then even then you give it to the director, and the director says, thanks for these guidelines. This is what we're going to do, but that it was weak in structure, or at least weak in what we were given, what we were shown, Go ahead.
4 writers getting to write lines like "Hawks and wolves mate for life." Together? Where's that film? Where have I been? They never covered that on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, but there were so many clunky lines that just like fell like a cast iron. I don't know.
Now Brian Torreson's bringing in the 90s. Bringing in the 90s, repping the 90s. Robert Wagner. Although he would have fit with that 80s.
Yeah.
That 80s soundtrack. Him and Stephanie Powers as Lady Macbeth and
Stephanie Powers.
Remember, what the heck was that television show?
Heart to Heart.
Thank
Tuesday
you.
nights. Tuesday night at 8. How could you forget?
I remembered the cast name. Come on, cut me some slack here.
Wasn't there Fixer the butler, or was it Lionel Stander or something like that? They had this old guy that used to fix stuff up for them, and he was their driver, and awesome.
Here's a question, and also first of all, it's been a while. Everyone, perfect opportunity to beg you for a like, ask you to subscribe, and let's not forget to ring the bell.
I gotta buy a bell.
Here's a bit of a teaser, but I'm going to tie it into what we're talking about. Like 80s fantasy adventures. This one had a romantic thing going on, and I do, Jim. The more I think about it, the more I think you're bang on. Like there is a bit of an Emile Zola, I will escape and then I will return to bring the happy couple together thing going on here. Was Emile Zola wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame, wasn't it?
Victor Hugo, actually, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Emile Zola. Jacques Hughes.
Yes.
But and a little heads up for you folks. I recently did an interview with this. Here, let me bring up a picture for you all. This fine young man. His name is Curtis Judd, and he has a couple of YouTube channels. One is Light and Sound for video. Like, it is a tech and an education YouTuber, but he was kind enough, because he's also done sound mixing for film and sound recording for film and television. He was kind enough to do an interview with me on that and how he kind of looks at film now. And we had this big rambling conversation, Jim, where we, of course, because we're all of the same age, we're all of a similar vintage, Star Wars comes up.
Yeah.
But it made me think of you, Jim, and
the rambling conversation part?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Well, no. It was funny, actually. He's like, because he's sometimes dipped into ours, and he's like, once we finally were done, and I'm like, yeah, it's getting tired, and we've recorded the interview. Then we kept talking after the recording of the interview, and he says, no, I feel like I've gotten the Jim and Rob experience. It's been on this over 2 hours. But what he was saying about Star Wars and the new Star Wars. And it was that his daughter, who's, maybe Maya's age, like both, like she's in American college now, but he was saying, one of the things he kind of really enjoyed about the new Star Wars was that he got to see this experience like he's like our age. So, he had that 70s experience with Star Wars in a theater. Whereas his daughter finally got to have this big cultural thing. He got to have it. Or you get to see his daughter have that cultural touchstone, that moment. And how I think this is relevant is, so you had some of these truly awesome films, late 70s, into the early 80s, but I gotta admit, mid to late 80s, as far as this genre went, was there anything like, and this is for everyone in the chat too, can we actually point to anything of this genre that was like, wow? Like, I know there's some people who still have like a real soft spot for Never Ending Story. I think Brian and I were probably riffing on the same list. But where the heck was it? Sorry, guys. Oh, there we are. But like, you had some remarkable films. Labyrinth.
Yeah,
which
I was going to mention that earlier.
Like a great, but I'm not sure they are of the Time Bandits, which is just straight up weird, but that's early 80s.
Yeah.
Terry Gilliam classic. The Princess Bride, but as far as an actual fantasy adventure.
Yeah.
Which, I know it's more sci-fi fantasy adventure with Star Wars, but there's kind of a, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which really had an adventure and a bit of a fantasy theme, like it was magical, superstitious. I'm wondering, like, was there anything like after, say, 1983 that you could really put in the same league, like a cultural thing? Go full G.I. Jane. We do need a bell, Jim.
Yeah, I know.
That's a great idea, Brian. Okay. Oh, good Lord. All right. So Richard, Princess Bride. Although there's a camp factor to the Princess Bride that I'm not, like, a purpose, an intentional.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if it had
and it is as cultural as.
Yeah. I sort of wonder if at that time sort of fantasy had its day. You already had the sort of the critically acclaimed, what's George Lucas's early one, the THX 1138? Is that what it's called?
Like his student film that got turned into a feature.
Yeah, Robert Duvall's in it. You had, of course, Stanley Kubrick's 2001. So you had those really serious science fiction movies. They weren't necessarily fantasies, though. But then, that sort of maybe...
No, I really am saying 1977.
But leading to Star Wars.
That's
so maybe
magic.
that was... Yeah, and that was sort of like the...
Swords.
Yeah.
The Force.
That was sort of like a big uppercut, wasn't it? Like in terms of its cultural success, its critical success, its financial success, and I don't know. Maybe they were just sort of riding the wave for a few years, and then it just got tired, maybe for a while. Because I'm thinking late '80s. Also there's changes, right? There's changes in what they film.
We do have to acknowledge that brilliance that is Ice Pirates.
I have to think about it there. So too many things. This is bringing too many different movies up for me. I'm going to have to research some of these after I'll be up till 3 a.m.
Buckaroo Banzai with Peter Weller.
Oh my gosh.
But go back to what you're saying, Jim.
I sort of wonder if it had ridden that wave. A lot of times, and I keep on telling my son this, and I say...
Brian's just full of hot takes. He's got to come on regularly just to keep feeding us those hot takes, those mashups.
Telling my son that there will be an end to this superhero movie craze right now, right?
Yeah.
It will, like a lot of things, it will come to an end, just like the Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme movies of the 80s. And maybe that's the answer there, is maybe those came up at that time, right?
Yeah.
So the trends of these things, they change over time.
Die Hard.
Yeah. And
We had
Die
John
Hard
Hughes,
sort of...
which had that nice sweet spot.
Yeah.
John Hughes. Those 3-4 movies right in the middle of the decade.
Mm-hmm.
Crocodile Dundee.
Who's mentioning? Oh my God! Yay!
Yay! Yay!
He's still he's still kicking though. Paul Hogan.
Paul Hogan,
former worker on the Sydney Harbor Bridge. Yeah. No.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Sorry, what you're saying? Yeah, the superhero.
Yeah, so just westerns were big at one time. They still make them. They probably always will. Somebody will get a bee in their bonnet and want to make a western.
It'll never be that 40 years. This is what we do.
Yes, and same with superheroes. From now on, there probably always will be one or two. Say all this Marvel stuff, sort of maybe because of COVID or whatever. Who knows? It just sort of dies off, right? And in the future, I predict that there will be some other take. How about this from the the Invisible Planes point of view, or whatever. I mean, just fill in the blank. There will be some fresh take on superheroes. There'll probably be 2, 3, 4, half a dozen in a year. But with that, perhaps it just sort of rode that wave. Got into you got into that time where the special effects, the computer work wasn't quite as good, and the other special effects were sort of falling behind, and things just looked kind of cheesy, right? In the mid '80s,
it's the what is it? You're chasing after. There's more money chasing after. Trying to split up either the same size market or a shrinking market even.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course costs get cut. You don't have look at this thing. Not the $20 million is nothing to seize at for 1985, but they're obviously cheaping out in some areas.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. So yeah, I'm kind of with you there, but I'm when I look at the superhero genre, the sci-fi kind of superhero genre, I'm wondering, like the American Western and what it meant to the film industry, like goes back from the 30s to the end of the 60s, film and television. It was such a, it's like, oh, we make Westerns and some other movies. And I'm being, there's a fair bit of hyperbole, but I remember researching Badland that movie we took a look at. And ever since, every now and then there's a, not just an homage or another subverting the tropes kind of thing. Yeah, the Westerns didn't die, but they've never reached that height, and probably never will again. It's done. I'm not sure we're there yet for superheroes.
Yeah. No. This thing will probably. I mean, there's too much money in it. It's sort of big it's got the cultural currency right now. We're now going into what generation of it? Maybe the second generation, second iteration, or what have you. But so there's they've killed off Iron Man. Cap is probably good. He's, I guess, been killed off from old age. And so they're looking to invigorate it with
the phase 4.
Yeah.
It's like they've got it labeled.
And years ago, I remember Charlie and I. It was a May day. It was May. It was a Sunday, and it was snowing. And I was so depressed. I said, "Oh, let's go see that Iron Man movie." And that was about 10 or 12 years, or whenever it was. And that was our first sort of introduction to it. And he's a grown, an adult man person now. So
yeah.
But these things, these trends, like the Westerns, they could last 30 years, they could last 40 years. They're not going to last forever. They do end, yeah.
Absolutely.
And something takes its place. Some other thing takes its place.
First of all, Richard brought up Star Trek, how it had its ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I think that's why I think you can almost bundle, they're, say, two pillars of an overarching genre. Star Trek and Star Wars, and they're not the same thing, but there's a fair bit of overlap in there. Or you can maybe even say, okay, you got Star Trek over here, and then in the middle there's Star Wars, and then over here is the superhero movie or whatever. But there's so much overlap in there. They got kind of we just haven't come up with a name for it.
Yeah.
But I want to. So Richard makes a great point. But here's something Brian is talking about, which kind of goes back to my original question. Superman 4 killed the 80s superhero movies. And it's interesting, Richard Donner, people talk about the Donner cut, like, hey, that was a good movie, and he got kind of screwed on that one. Mm-hmm. So it was, but and I'm not sure that this movie kind of fits with the 80s superhero movies such as
no,
though. I think they're just different,
yeah.
But there's a stylistic thing going on here with this movie that's very Richard Donner. Not just the music, but there's kind of a I think this is unfair, but it's the only word I can think of right now. There's a camp thing going on there.
Yeah.
In this, like in Ladyhawke, in his superhero movie or his Superman movies, it's not like it's a string through everyone, but I think there's kind of a stylistic thing going on in that part of the 80s that just got kind of blew up when Die Hard came out.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we really are bored with this because we love this gritty guy who's standing on glass.
Yeah.
Going, saying the MF, dropping MF bombs.
And and when you came out of the theater on that one, you were like, holy crackers, what was that?
Holy crackers.
Moonlighting what?
Oh, that's a hashtag.
Yeah.
Well, what, I don't know, Jim, where do you think this thing fits? I gotta admit, I don't think of this movie as something that, why do I remember it? Here's my question, maybe, is, now that I've seen it, I'm like, this was not, to me, a good movie. You mark. I'm a hard marker. Maybe that's it. I mark pretty hard. And you're a little gentler on the pen. You're a little gentler with the red pen. But I still remember it. I'm not going to forget it.
Yeah.
What is it about this movie? Is it something where there's some magic in there that I'm not. This is something else we need to talk about. I can't agree with Richard more. There's a great moment that I'm like, is this like an homage or did they unintentional parody, unintentional imitation? Okay, but yeah, what is it about this movie? Why? And I say this to Brian, to Richard, to Katie. Why do we remember this movie? Like, it's 35 years ago. It wasn't that like. Hard marker or gentle marker wasn't that good. Like, why does this stick in our brain?
Yeah.
Is it just the power of the talent?
Yeah,
or the on-screen talent?
It could be
was stellar. Like,
yeah. We were, I sort of remember those days, and we were pretty starved for this kind of, any kind of fantasy. Starved is a bit of a strong word, but we were really jonesing for, that's a little better, some kind of science fiction fantasy. So I think, you were like me, anytime anything new came out or showed up at the video store, remember those kids?
Yep.
You would be like, oh, let's check out the new arrivals, or conversely, if they were in the theaters and you had a few bucks, or maybe it was Toonie Tuesdays and you could
at the town,
that you'd hit that movie theater and check out that fantasy movie. I think that was probably part of it. Also the age we were teenagers back then, and it was just a matter of your own personal tastes and okay, here's another one, let's go check out that, and I think that was probably, it was a draw for us specifically back then. It wasn't just a piece of content that, on Netflix or a way to kill 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever, but it was an event, almost like an event movie for us, I think. Good or bad?
We got a few. No, that's again, and some other folks have commented. Let's take them. Okay, well, Richard, we're going to put a pin in this one about Monty Python, and even the Princess Bride, but we'll come back to that. Okay, now this is a reference to Lois works in Superman, not the DCU. Likes Pink very much. I think we're circling back with the Superman 4. Now this is, here's something Richard Ladyhawke et al. Knowingly aimed at a small, mostly male fantasy market. I think in the mid '80s it wasn't that small. Like, they had real movie stars. And 20 million bucks. It wasn't like. That was a pretty solid budget. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it was definitely. Now here's though. I think I agree with you, Richard. Like, let's say 50-60%. I think, and I have not been able to find the data that supports this. I haven't looked that hard, but I remember being taught years ago when I first got into the local film industry and just started to become really aware, and I think I read it in Premiere or something. Sometimes they'd have a more businessy kind of side of the business article in Premiere. Yeah. Does anyone remember Premiere magazine?
Oh, I love Premiere. Yeah, I used to buy it on Portage Avenue.
Yeah. But it was basically a bit of an oversimplification, but there was some empirical truth to it. 14-year-old boys drove the film industry. They were the first ones to go to this stuff. And that's, and you need that for initial kind of bang to see if a movie goes anywhere. So 14-year-old boys, 15-year-old girls drove music. It's the girls who danced, girls who bought a lot of music. So they were driving that, or attracting boys who, it's like, oh, okay, that's the music the girls are listening to. And this is like, again, I'm grossly oversimplifying something I read in the 90s. But yeah, so I agree with you, Richard. Yeah, there's a chunk of this is aimed at that teen boy kind of, D&D fantasy. But I think it was like a lot, it's 20 million bucks and real movie stars. There was a lot of other dreck
Yeah.
Ice pirates. Now, and again, but I don't know. Are you buying that, Richard? Or, I'm kind of curious. Like, it's I think it was a larger market, but there was other stuff at the edges where it's like 20 million. Lucky you get 20,000. Cleavage. That'll get us our butts in seats. Okay. Now, Richard, kind of like the market for horror films, never intended to really win an Academy Award. But yeah, I think they were really trying to make a real movie here. They didn't succeed in making a good one, but yeah, I think Ladyhawke was like Richard Donner. It's not like he's a bum of a director just kind of churning them out.
Yeah.
There was a Mankiewicz on the writing team,
and he did Richard Donner. He did Goonies, didn't he? And he did
Goonies, and right into the 90s, 90s and early aughts. His wife had had another 10 years and twice as many movies. But of course, she's producing. Her and her husband, they're the Donner Company, and she was still an executive producer, working executive producer on Deadpool.
Oh, really?
Deadpool. Yeah, no, Lauren Schuler. That's okay.
Wow.
Brian Torrenson talking about Gen Z. We'll never know. Be kind, rewind. You know what? I don't know, Jim. What? You know what? Before we get into your last, missing. Oh, Richard has heard this explanation, but he, it could have just been me because I've referred to this a lot. So let's, Richard, it could have just been a loudmouth you hang out with who just keeps saying it so often that you're like, I think I heard this. I'm a weird kind of slightly self-aware Trump who's like, well, I say it a lot.
70 million for Old Guard. Women drive music, boys drive movies.
Richard, they were having a little higher. Yeah, I think they were trying to make a real movie. And yes, they did not succeed. So we agree on that for sure. What else do we got to say about this one, Jim? I'm kind of...
it sort of makes you want to look at some of the other vehicles that I rewatched War Games a couple of years ago, and that was, it was good. It wasn't a sort of blow away, it didn't blow me away as much as it probably did at the time. But, I'd like to take a look at more Rutger Hauer movies and that sort of thing. And actually
We Are Gloriously Handsome.
Oh, that guy again. He's back.
Jamie, here's another angle for you, just in case.
Look at that. Multi-camera. Jameson threw me off track there. What the hell were we talking about? I don't take compliments well, so I just.
Brian.
Oh yeah, what it did. Yeah, I would like to. I'd like to just check out some of the older movies that these folks did and sort of revisit them. Vittorio Storaro, the cinematographer. It's been years since I've seen The Last Emperor. I've never seen Reds, actually. That's sort of on the list. But try to find it. I'm sure it's somewhere. I could probably rent it or something, but it's something like 14 hours long as well.
The library.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the old man telling me he went and saw it. He went and walked down to the Met.
Yeah.
In downtown Winnipeg. For those of you who don't know, Jim and I, while we're socially distancing here, we're both raised, I was born and raised in Winnipeg. Were you
pretty much
BC?
Yeah.
Your formative years were here, and then
Yeah.
Yeah, he walked down to the Met, and I can still remember him when he said, "Oh, and they had an actual intermission, like where we got up and went and got some more pop and
Yeah.
stuff." Brian, teens going to Titanic make it the biggest movie of all time for 20 years. It'd be interesting to dig at the demographics, but yeah, I suspect it was a lot of again, who's got the discretionary income and time?
Yeah,
it's I will have a rant about another YouTuber and a reference to A24. And
today.
No, it'll be a later. Maybe I'll stuff it in the Film Friday 5-ish.
Okay.
And not, I don't want to. It's not so much to rant about that YouTuber, but more that idea that it's 20-somethings and 30-somethings. It's like they don't go to movies. They don't have time. 20-somethings are discovering other forms of entertainment.
Yeah.
30-somethings have kids, and they're going, well, we go out once every 3 years. But yeah, we are beautiful.
So your dad goes to the Met? Oh yeah, and
oh yeah. And he was kind of thrilled by that. But going to comments here, Brian, War Games Tic-Tac-Toe made Jim J. Bullock a star on Hollywood Square. And yes, as am I.
There we go.
Okay, so listen, Jim. Before we let everyone know what the movie is for next week, and get your what could you give can you help me beg for some more likes and subscriptions? Hook me up, man.
Do that.
All
I
right,
need two visual. There's subscribe as there's, what would you do if you got subscribe in Pictionary? I don't know what you would do. Like you just, do people even know what magazines are anymore?
You know what? I suspect there'd be actually, I suspect YouTube would come to help. Everyone's seen the little subscribe thing.
Yeah.
You draw a little hand, and then it just kind of floats up and dink.
That's true.
Don't forget to ring the bell, everyone. Okay, Jim, do you want to, before we get to our last thought and whether or not we're going to recommend it, why don't you tell us about the next movie we're going to look at?
Yes, it is on Netflix, so it's available to everyone who has $10. It's called Freaks, You're One of Us, and that's next Monday.
We're visiting
October 5th.
Deutschland.
Du bist eine von uns. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I specifically, Jim, I specifically chose that one. So yes, folks, Freaks, You're One of Us, a superhero movie of a sort.
Yeah.
Talking about, if we think of these things in evolutionary terms, this is at the point where they're spreading into all these little nooks and crannies. This kind of superhero, that kind. We've got superhero as horror, or Superman as horror. It's The Boys, etc. So I don't think we're quite done with it. I'm sure there's some more interesting takes that are coming our way.
Oh, there will be for years, probably 20 years, but who knows what's going to replace it.
So, Jim, last thought. And would you recommend? Would you say it's worth people's time?
My wife's still jealous of Michelle Pfeiffer, and nothing to do with my reaction to her. But anyway, I don't think I would. I mean, I'd like to, but watch The Last Emperor instead, or watch Election with Matthew Broderick if you're needing to see him in something. Rutger Hauer has done other work as well. What was the hobo one that he did in Canada? Do you remember that one? It was one of his last. Hobo with a Gun.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah. I've never watched that, and I've wanted to. But anyway,
what about The Hitcher?
Yes, yeah.
That was, I even still now kind of
Oh, he was in another Hawk movie.
That was really brilliant.
He was in another Hawk movie, Nighthawks, with Sylvester Stallone, which has the best ending, which I will not divulge here. The ending is so awesome. But anyway, again,
Hobo with a shotgun, Jamie chiming in.
Oh, thank you, Jamie.
David Hasselhoff in it.
Yeah, Hasselhoff. Nighthawks. I don't do a movie without Hawk in the title. But anyway, no, who was that? That was Arnold, I think.
Okay, so you
So yeah, I don't think I'd suggest.
Oh yeah, you got to check this out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Jelly Duck. Hobo with a shotgun. Everyone knows Hobo with a shotgun. We may have to put this on our list, Jim.
Yeah. I've not seen it.
It's Canadian.
So. It is Canadian, yeah.
Okay. Well, so for myself, yeah, no, unless, the only reason I would, say, oh, maybe as kind of no, I can't even say that. No, don't. Unless you're involved in a show like ours, where you can dive deep into it, you can justify the time and money you spent on the movie by spending free time with us.
Yes.
Of course, unless you check out an Amazon link in the description. But I agree with you. You can't recommend it. I'm glad we watched it, Jim. Like you'd said earlier.
Yeah.
We're getting, we pick a lot of movies we like. This is probably the first one where I was looking back at our past, where I was like, I'm not going to like this. And I did my best to kind of keep an open mind. And even though, the first 10 minutes after you get over the, couple of the bumps, it was like, okay, maybe I'm remembering it. And then it's like, wow, this is just not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Can we know why? Can we know what they need to do? Come on, let's get into the adventure. And you just never got there. It's not so much not getting to the fireworks factory as it's like, do we even know? Are we going to a fireworks factory? Is that a fireworks
is that
factory
the point?
in the distance?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we are. Maybe it's maybe we're going to a resort.
Did they have fireworks back then? They must have.
They must have. So anyway, folks, what I think what we're gonna do here. Oh my goodness. Okay, everyone's going a little nuts, but I gotta put these up.
It's distracting. I feel we're being heckled.
Wait, Titanic to the shotgun. Oh, Jamie, Jim and Rob overanalyze with a shotgun. All right, on that very entertaining note, so where the heck was I? All right, our next movie is Freaks, You're One of Us, Du bist einer von uns, and I'm going to make Astrid and Jens hear this part to correct my German.
No. Challenge.
So that's the movie. It's on Netflix right now, probably global because it's a Netflix original. So check it out and then come back to us. So we'll be back here on YouTube and perhaps Facebook if it hasn't been copyright struck, because they're kind of crazy. Monday, October 5th. At 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time here in North America, universal coordinated time, offset -5, and I think I got that right. All right, Jim, is it time to? I think it's time to cue the outro, eh?
I think so. The peanut gallery is not done with us yet, but
yeah, well, it's we'll keep throwing that stuff in while we cue out. Oh, and everyone, please go check out my nonsense Film Friday 5-ish. Watch it multiple times.
It's awesome.
It's outstanding. All right. yeah, I think I'm queuing this up now, folks. Where the heck are we here? I'm really having a hard time figuring out my thing here. Where the heck? Oh, there we are. Okay.
I've been in your world.